what we're going to start off with, according to the instructions, is we're going to start off with the actual base plate itself. Now, I'm going to push off the two side plates over to the right for a little bit and start with the base plate. Now, the instructions say to take the actual solid aluminum block, and on the bottom of the block is 5 different offset holes, like this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we're going to thread those onto the actual plate itself. With the plate, with the actual mounting plate, comes these 5 flathead screws, and they are actually Allen keyed like this. So we'll go ahead and just start these screws like that. And we go through and just start all these screws. And again, this is just the mounting base plate. So let me go through and I'll tighten all these screws, and then we'll start up with the side plates. I went through and tightened all these screws down. Now this is all secured. Obviously I told you it came with a wrench, so I can flip this over. And now this is our mounting base. Now from here is where we'll start assembling all the sides to the actual mounting plate itself. What we need to do is on the right side, what the instructions say, we're going to take 4 of these 2-inch long screws with a washer, and we're going to push these all through here like this. Now I've already kind of preset these on here, so let's push these all through like this. Now, but before I do this, I also need to, according to the instructions, put a washer. Now this is a 1/2-inch washer on the outside, on the OD, the outside diameter, with a 1/4 inch on the inside diameter. So I'm going to push. I'd rather put a washer on this side too. And then on the right side, I'm going to just push this through the side of the mounting plate like this. So now it'll look like this. The tools that we're going to use is just a socket set with a 7/16 socket. I'm using a 7/16 nut driver and then a 7/16 open-end wrench like this. All right. So these are just the tools that I'm going to use for this particular main section of this build. Now, continuing on, we also have these 6 aluminum spacers, and with these, where these goes, they fit right in here on these sides that allow you to separate the 3 sections for the 3 position tool rest that we have. So these are just spacers that fit in between here. We'll have this same 2-inch type bolt, and it'll go through and it'll fit between like this. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and I'll put all the bolts and the nuts through all these pieces here like this, and then I'll show I'll show where we are, and we'll continue on from there. Let me point out one thing that's important to understand. With the kit here, there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 2-inch screws. Actually 7, 8, 9, 10 total that fit on the kit. But in the middle of this kit is 3 3-inch screws. Now that's very important because they go onto this middle section. If you're looking at these 3 parts right here, not all 4, but these 3 sections, they fit in the middle like this. And I'll show you and explain to you why in just a little bit. So we'll have 3 2-inch, we'll have 3 3-inch, and then 3 2-inch again on this plate build like this. Now from here, all the way, the bottom 2 rows like this is going to be these spacers like this. All right. So the spacers will slide on the bottom 2 rows. Now this is the front of the tool arm. So where we're doing all the sanding and doing all the grinding on the knife is actually facing towards me right now, this direction. This is the back and this is the front. Now included with this is this top mounted red anodized aluminum piece. This is where the actual tension arm will attach to it. But here's one of the things too that's important to remember about this. Just as we put spacers between this right side plate and the aluminum solid bar on the bottom, we also need to put 3 little spacer washers between the screws on the top and this aluminum bar. So what I'll do is I'll put these small spacers between the actual bolt and this red top bar that's going to go on. And so now I'm going to put my hand across all these, and then I can actually just go on and slide and put this bar on. Okay? So now we're just about ready to put on the left side plate. Now we're going to put on the left side plate. Now, one of the things I found was that this plate actually does have a type of orientation to it. It does go either one side or the other. So whenever you're putting and assembling your grinder together, you'll have to figure out which side that the plate actually orients so that it'll mainly fit this top plate like this. One of the things that you can do, I think actually if I start on the bottom would be better, is to actually put in the washer and then go ahead and put on the nut. And just tighten the bottom down, that way it actually has some rigidity for you to tighten and put the washers and the nuts on the rest of this. So I've gone through and put all the bolts, the washers and the nuts into both the side plates. Remembering again that the center section, meaning between these three, is three 3-inch bolts, but the outside bolts are 2-inch, okay? As well as at the bottom are all the 2-inch. So I've gone through and I've started using my 7/16 wrench and nut driver, and I've gone through and I started tightening all these up. But I'll do my final tightening with the wrench and just really sink everything down really good in just a little bit. But one of the things to continue the process is these 3 panels. Now these go on the let's see, this is the face of the grinder on the right hand side, but these panels actually have 2 hex cutouts for them, and then a single one with a circle. The way that these work is you set one onto the panel like this. Okay, this slides over. And set the other one again. There's 2 of them that are built the same way. And you put this nut in there like that. And you put this nut in here like that. And then on top of all of these is this face plate like this. Okay? Like that. And then from here is when I put on my final washers and nuts like this. Now we're going to go and put in the vertical uprights. Now there'll be 2. There's a left side and there's a right side. Again, this is facing forward towards the grinder like this. So we have 3/4 inch diameter and 1 inch long bolts that we're using with washers on each side like this. And now we're going to fit those through the holes that are on the side of the grinder like this. But it says also to make sure that you put washers on the inside of these vertical uprights like this on this one, and then you'll tighten these nuts down on the inside. So let me go through and I'll tighten these down, and then we'll continue on mounting the motor mount. The next thing we're doing is we're going to be mounting the motor mounting plate. Now one of the things the instructions said to do was to make sure that you have to remove these 2 mounting screws, but it says if you tighten all these screws together, the inside washer that's inside here between this plate and the aluminum bar should stay, and it has. So make sure, guys, that you tighten this up very, very well. All these bolts and nuts, make sure they're tightened very well. So I remove these, so now I can go through and push these bolts back through like this. All right, so these are going through here, and then I have my other upright, my other vertical that I need to put on, and then these will go through, and watch, these will go through like this. Moving over here, these will go through and attach, just like I did the other side. So these bolts will go through here, and they're sandwiching the vertical upright against this mounting plate like this. Now, if I turn this around, you'll see that we have the washer, and we also have the nut going through this side, and then we have the other bolts and their washers and nuts going on this side. So let me go through and tighten all this stuff down, and we'll continue on from there. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to attach, this is called the pivot arm. Now the pivot arm usually comes without this actually pivot or tracking assembly right here. It usually comes off of it. So the instructions themselves have you doing, putting on the assembly arm first, and then putting on these parts, and then also putting on what's called the actual, the gas shock mounting assembly. What I wanted to do was I kind of wanted to deviate from these plans a little bit and kind of build all this first before I put it onto the actual grinder, the main part of the grinder. So you go through and you attach these 2 bolts here and this whole assembly. I'm not sure if it'll come with this little piece already attached to it, but if it doesn't, you just put one long bolt through it with this washer and this nut, and then you screw these down and attach these 2 bolts down like this. Now the next part is the actual the gas piston or the shock assembly itself. And it comes with these 2 types of mounting brackets. So what I do is I just flip this over. I have this nut driver, and you put on the actual mounting bracket. Now, as you see, it has a longer end on it, or angled in on one side, and a little bit more obtuse, I guess, or maybe slanted angle on this side. This actually goes forward. So it comes with the bolts that you need. So go ahead and attach these bolts like so. Oops. And you can just go through with a nut driver like this and go ahead and tighten these all down. Let me show the other components. So you actually have the shock itself, and with that comes these little types of ends that attach. They're very simple. They attach to the shock, they thread on. And what they'll do is they'll actually go through with these screws and this spacer. They'll go through like this and they'll fit. And then they'll attach themselves to the base of the top plate of the actual grinder itself. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go through and attach this pivot arm to the grinder. Alright, so what I've done is I've gone through and I've attached the shock assembly mount to the top of the pivot arm. I also attached it to the bottom of this actual base, kind of this top base plate on the grinder. And then on the actual gas piston assembly itself, it comes with these two pieces and then this little spacer that goes in between them. So this will slide between here. You'll run the screw through there, and then you'll just put the nut on the side and you'll go through and tighten it down. Now, in just a second, we're going to go through and put the actual pivot arm on, and then I'll do the same assembly or same procedure onto the top part. Now, the pivot arm it requires that you use a 3 1/4 inch long bolt, and then inside here you'll also have these two nylon spacers like this. So you push the bolt through one side, put on one spacer, and don't push it all the way through. Then you have to go through and you start the pivot arm, and then there's another nylon spacer. Let's see if we can do this all with one hand. And you set this between them. There we are. And then you push the rest of the way through, okay? Now we have another washer that goes on the other side, and then we have the nut like this. Now, since these are 3/4, I'm using just a 3/4 box-end wrench and a crescent wrench. Now, Chris said in the instructions to tighten the pivot arm all the way down until it will not swing freely, and then slowly loosen it until it moves freely. So like you said, I'm going to tighten these down so the pivot arm does not move at all. Okay. Right now it does not move at all. So then I'm going to just back it off a little bit. And maybe just a little bit more. There we are. So now it's not very, very loose, but it's not very stiff either. Now, from here, I'm going to turn this around and show you that we need to, since we've already connected the bottom of the base for the piston assembly, we're going to now go through and attach the top of it like this. So again, this is kind of the same procedure. Go through and put this spacer, provided spacer, between the gas piston arm like this. There we are. And now we're going to go through and put the bolt in there. Kind of hard to see sideways like this. Okay. And then we actually have the nut on the other side. The next step is to actually attach the tracking knob and then the actual handle. So this is very, very simple. The tracking knob goes on the left side like this. The knob's provided. And you just go through and you tighten it up a little bit. And then we actually have the actual pivot arm handle. So the screw goes through the right side, and then you just thread on the handle. And then I have this T-handle Allen wrench, and just go through and tighten it up. There we go. Next, we need to attach the flat platen to the tool arm. All the parts that you see, everything that I've been using, all the bolts and nuts and washers, everything is included in the kit. There's nothing that you have to buy separately. So we have all these different parts, and so now we're going to attach the flat platen to the tool arm itself. We have to use this Allen bolt. I think it's about a 1 inch long Allen bolt. And then we have this adjustable arm, and the adjustable arm is used so you can angle the flat platen at different degrees like this, however you want. So I set these two washers Before I do this, let me show you this. You have two different sides on the tool arm. You have two holes that are closer towards, this is the front end. You have two holes that are closer towards the front end, and then you have two holes that are farther back. To attach the flat platen, you need to attach the platen to the two holes that are closer towards the front of the tool arm. So I'm going to set my washers on top like this. And then I've already put another set of washers on the actual Allen bolt and then on the adjustable handle itself. So I'll go through and tighten this down, and then hold this and then put on the adjustable arm and start to tighten it down. Now you don't want to over tighten this Allen, because then the flat platen will not be able to move. Okay, so we just want to snug it up. And then now what's nice about this is if you decide you want to grind with a little bit more of an angle, you can tighten this down, and then the flat platen can sit at an angle like that. If you want to be vertical straight up and down, you can just use a level or a 1, 2, 3 block and check how square it is, and then you can just adjust this and make it square. Okay, from here we're going to, since we have the flat platen, the main tool arm, and the actual mounting plate already assembled, this is what the flat platen will, the flat plate for the flat platen will attach with these angled brackets. And what they will do is they'll actually attach here, and then you just go ahead and mount these. Now what's nice about this is you can adjust how far or how close the platen will sit according to the belt coming over in the wheel. So the way that you attach these is, let me move this out the way, is you go through, and Chris said make sure that you put 2 of these washers, these 3/8 size washers, excuse me, on the front. Now the reason why is you need to make sure that you put 2 of them so that the threads won't push through the plate itself. So we'll go through and we'll attach this one, and we'll take another bolt and 2 washers and another angled bracket. We'll go through and we'll attach this. Okay. Now, where this part actually mounts to the flat platen, the assembly, we only need 1 washer. So then we'll use another bolt and another washer, and then these will screw down. So I'll just tighten this down a little bit, a little snug, and we'll use this other washer, and we'll tighten this down too. So we'll tighten all these down, and then we'll go on from here. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to attach the 2-inch wheels that will go at the top of the platen here and at the bottom of the platen. Now these wheels are all provided. They have bearings inside of them on both sides. And then so what you do is you take this long bolt, I think it's about a 2 3/4 or 3-inch bolt. You push it through here, and then the instructions say to put 5 of these washers like this. So we're going to take 5 of the washers, and we're going to put it at the top of the flat platen. We'll tighten it down in a second. And I kind of already put these together. Same thing. Put the bolt through here with the 5 washers, and we're going to put it on the bottom. And we're going to tighten these down, and I'm using a 3/4 inch wrench. So now that we've attached the 2 wheels on the flat platen, we need to ensure that the actual flat platen is level with the wheels. Now once you loosen these back screws like this, the flat platen can actually move back and forth, and it can actually angle left and right. So what the instructions recommend is that you take a ruler and you put it across the wheels like this, and then you go and you level out the platen to the ruler, making sure that they're all on the same plane. So you could find the plane that you want, snug it down a little bit, check it again. They seem to be on the same plane like this, and then go ahead and tighten them up. The next step is installing the tracking wheel. The tracking wheel is pretty much the heart of the grinder, and so what we need to do is go through and install this. Now, one of the things I found out by talking to Chris is that the wheel itself has an orientation. We have one part actually has a little bit of a step in it, whereas the other side is just flat like this. Now, to properly install this, the flat part, which is completely flat next to the bearing, has to be against the actual angle of this arm, the tracking arm itself like this. So what you do is you take the provided bolt, you put on 3 washers like this, and you push it through, and then you put 1 more washer on the other side, and then you thread it onto the tracking part of the tracking arm like this. Now you can go through and use your wrench, and I'll snug it in a second. But as you see, it spins freely and so smooth that it's quiet. Now let me spin this around. What this will allow us to do is, once the belt is on and the rest of the grinder is complete, we can adjust the tracking, and the wheel will angle left or right like this, and therefore moving the belts left or right. By moving it this way or moving it that way, it angles and then moves the belts on the grinder. Now this is one of the last steps before we actually attach the motor to the grinder. And then this is the provided tool rest that came with the kit. Now the way this works is you have these 2 different bolts with washers, and on the bottom of the flat platen you come over, or the tool arm rather, you attach these, and then you have this other one that you can attach. And then when you actually when you put this onto the grinder, it has a slot cut in it that you can adjust how far or how close you want this to be to the actual grinder. So I'm going to pull this over, pull the grinder closer to us, and I'm going to attach this like this. And then as you can see, let me move this over, as you can see, this is the actual tool rest for the flat platen. And I can tighten the bolts on the bottom of it, and I can either push in or pull out the actual tool rest for working with the flat platen. So now we're in the last step of the installation and build of this grinder, the Wilmont LB1000 grinder. The last step is installing the motor. Now this is I believe it's a single phase 1.5 horsepower motor at 110, and it's a 2 horsepower motor running at 220 volts. This is the grinder itself is a single speed, and it runs about 1800 RPMs. We take the motor and we go ahead and we install it or put it through the side like this, because the actual drive wheel will attach here and the belts are going this direction. We're using 9/16 bolts like this. We have the key that actually fits on the actual shaft of the motor, and then we have the main drive wheel. And on the main drive wheel we also have where the key steps in, and then we have the Allen key to tighten down the tension screw against the key. So this will actually go through and install onto the motor. But before we do that, we install all the 9/16 screws on the 4 positions, the top and then the bottom screws here, and then we'll put the drive wheel on. Now in a little while, after I have this grinder actually set up in my shop, I'll go through and tell you what Chris told me on how to actually check the alignment of the belt and the tracking of the belt for your grinder. So we'll go through that, and I'll show you how it works, and we'll do that shortly. Okay guys, so we finished the build of the LB1000 grinder, and now we're actually in my home shop, and I wanted to show you and go over a few of the things that Chris were talking about, which was really important. Now, moving up to the tracking wheel, the information that comes with the instructions on how to build it goes through and tells you how to adjust the tracking so that your belt runs true. So the thing that we need to understand is that the tracking wheel is the center of the entire grinder. And what Chris said to do was to take and make sure that once you put your belt on and you've gone through and you tension the belt down like this, that the belt runs true, and then you need to look at the drive wheel in the back and make sure that the drive wheel in the back is running true. And if you follow it all the way down to the front platen, then we actually have these 2 little guide wheels that are in front of the platen. Now, in the instructions, he told us to put 5 washers, which I did. But one of the things I found from experience was after I turned this on and I watched the tracking of the belt, that the belt was actually running too far over to the left. So the thing that I did was I had to adjust these screws that are behind the platen, and I had to actually move the platen back over to the right, so that when I knew that the tracking was centered in the tracking wheel, I knew that it would be centered on the platen itself right here. So let's take a look at what this looks like, and I'll show you how it runs, and we'll go from there. Let's take a look at the grinder and show you how it grinds. Now when I turn the grinder on, the lights are going to dim a little bit in my shop here. I need to have that fixed as far as some of the wiring. But let's take a look at it and see what it looks like. Now, one of the things to know about the actual grinder itself is that it is fully adjustable as far as if you need to adjust tracking. You have a tracking knob on the left-hand side like this, and you can adjust the tracking and make it move from left to right. But one of the other things I wanted to talk to you about is a couple other attachments that you can actually get for the grinder. Now, this is the flat platen that comes with the kit, but the other thing that you can get for this from Chris at Wilmont Grinders is what's called a small arm attachment. So I'm going to take this out and put in a small arm attachment, small wheel attachment, excuse me, small wheel attachment. And the small wheel attachment allows you to use and put in these little small wheels. Now this is a 3/4 inch wheel, and you say, well, why would I need that? That's so that you can do these finger choils or these finger grooves like this. So within on your knife, if you're needing to do finger choils, or example, here's one that I made like this, I use this small wheel attachment or the small wheel to actually get in and do these finger choils or these finger grooves on the blade like this. So the way this works again is you put in the small wheel attachment. Then you have to buy these separately. You buy these, I bought this from usa-knifemaker.com. You can either run the belt with the belt running over the top, over this wheel right here, or you can actually tuck it underneath it and you'll get a much tighter type of finger choil. I'm running it underneath. And then what I had to do is I learned that I need to adjust the tracking wheel out to the right a little bit so that it'll stay centered on the small wheel. Same procedure, tighten this, pull tension on this, pull this back, and then tighten the adjustment wheel. Now you can check how true it's going to be, like this. And then turn on the grinder. And put on your glasses. Then you can go through it and you can grind. And now you can see how you can actually go through and do types of finger grooves or little cutouts like this for your fingers, whatever it may be. The next thing I want to show you are these flipping plates. Now these, Chris calls these flipping plates, are very, very simple. And you say, well, what do we need these plates for? What this allows you to do is take the grinder from being a vertical grinder and then flipping it over to a horizontal grinder. Now let me show you how I did this. This is two 3/4 inch pieces of plywood with big door hinges, and then this one side is bolted down to my bench. Now when I flipped this over, I actually went in so that the motor would not rest directly onto the board and be able to breathe. I put these pieces of rubber foot pads here so that when I flip the grinder over it, the motor can actually still breathe. So let me show you what this looks like. So what I do is I grab the grinder here and I just flip it over. And now I actually have a horizontal grinder. So again, if I'm doing finger choils, rather than having to stand next to it doing something like this, I can actually now just do them this way if I want. One of the things I recommend doing is to go out and buy some good knife making steel. Now I bought this steel from Aldo at New Jersey Steel Baron, and this is just 1084 steel, high carbon steel. But the other thing that I recommend is buying some type of knife blanks that's already made. Now I bought these knife blanks from Chris at Wilmont Grinders, and the knife comes just like this. This is his 4-inch knife, and it obviously does not come with the grinds on it. But this was me just learning how to do grinds on both sides of the blade, and this is one of his blanks. Now one of the things I did was I bought 4, was I went through and I kind of made this one a little bit different. So I went through and made this more of a sheep's foot style blade like this. Now this is a V-ground blade, as you see here, and then this is just a chisel ground blade, and I want to try my hand at doing some chisel grinds like that. But guys, I really highly recommend this grinder. It's been, for me, a great grinder, and Chris has been very informative, very helpful in answering questions that I may have about the grinder or grinding as a whole. He's been really great about doing that. So look up Wilmont Grinders, check out Chris, talk to him there, and he'll be able to help you with the LB1000 grinder or his a little bit higher end grinder. I think you will be very happy with both of them.